hopefully. So very welcome to the session. The session is about spaces for culture, how to protect art and culture from real estate related tensions. And we focus on the nightlife in this session. So I'm really happy that we are all here. I don't know much about everyone here, so this is one of the tasks that we have to fulfill, to introduce ourselves. Maybe to give a bit of a context to this topic, that a vibrant night is something that mirrors the city. It mirrors the creativity, the diversity, the progression of a city. Of course, it is always related to a physical space. For me, the night, a vibrant night has always to have 3 dimensions. It has to have a social, an aesthetic or cultural, as well as an economic dimension. And it is something that is based on 3 pillars. It's based on a community that is creative and is producing art and is curating art. It is about conditions, to have the right policy framework and maybe also public transportation at night. And it also so this is small together to Mikey to introduce yourself.
Yes, hello. I am Mikey. I live in Helsinki, Finland, and I have a kind of a multidisciplinary practice. So I've been working in the Finnish Innovation Fund Sitra with a democracy project and against polarization, and with this dialogue method, and also in a lifelong learning project. And I'm currently studying curating and contemporary art, and looking at topics like everyday utopias and collective practice. And I've also been quite involved in the Helsinki nightlife. I have been part of Myös Collective, which is promoting safer spaces and diversity in club culture. And I would say it's positioning. We don't have a fixed space, so maybe it has been somewhere a little bit between DIY, underground, and commercial events. But yeah, I would still maybe position Myös Collective as something more DIY and underground. And I guess this was the way to.
Yes, and then I hand it over to Anton.
Yeah, hello. My name's Anton Fleur. I'm working for Prolvets right now. My background is relating to the performative arts, and I was curating festival, like not the theater, but more performative arts in relation to the museum spaces and site-specific things. This twist to nightlife is a little bit surprising for me. I'm not relating to any kind of nightlife in Moscow, although I know it's quite active. But yeah, let's see. Thanks.
The topic of nightlife is my topic, so I'm relating to this, but I'm sure you can fill in from your side. Jacob, please.
Yeah, hello from Berlin. It's good to talk and see what's happening in other cities. I'm here in an old warehouse that became a complex for arts and activism and co-working and politics and like healing and body work and yoga. So it's like quite a like one sandbox or playground with lots of different tonalities, and we're just opening this new cultural center. And so you can see behind me the concrete structures that were kind of coming to this old space to hold a new artist residency that is 3 floors on top of this. And so we everything is brand new. Last month, the first, I don't know, 12 residents arrived, and it's going to be more. Next month, we're like 20 artists in residence in the same moment, and kind of stimulating this cultural center with different communities. And yeah, if there's more to share, it will come soon.
Nice. And we can see a bit of it, right, in the background.
Yeah, I mean, now it's construction site, but next week we have the first big conference, and we kind of kicking it off with this idea of like also like actually making partnerships with other spaces, and so like bonding our learning curve with other partners, and so it's like it feels like a timely thing to be connecting to you two now.
Nice. So I want to introduce myself as well shortly. I hope the connection is better now. Otherwise, I have to switch rooms and check which one is better. Nice. So my name is Lutz Leichsenring. I'm actually based in Berlin usually, but now I'm in Sao Paulo. I come from nightlife activism. I'm since 12 years the spokesperson of the Club Commission in Berlin, which is an advocacy organization for Berlin's vibrant club scene. And I'm also founder of an agency that's called VibeLab, and we're a purpose-driven consultancy that is doing research and advocacy about the night all over the world. And one of our projects that we launched in different cities, in Tokyo, New York, and Berlin, and now in Stockholm, is called the Creative Footprint, where we measure the amount of creative spaces and try to compare it and to also understand better where's the experimental spaces, where are the more commercial spaces, how are they used, where are the communities having their homes, etc. So that's a bit of the content that I can bring to the table from the research that we did. But I would like to hear from your work a bit more, how you came into interaction with real estate developers. How does this topic relate to your work, and how did you, what are the challenges that you're facing? But we don't have to go in a row, so just jump in if you want to.
Okay, let me start then. It's really a little bit of overview of what's the mood is in Moscow, well, more particularly, but maybe in Russia in general, that the property, the real estate, is really something that counts the most in the cultural activity, and it is relating to the, eventually to the past of the country, but it is actually accentuated recently. And the most important thing to have, well, the most important thing in the cultural activity in Moscow is to have a venue, and the venue is crucial. And if you have a venue, you can, like, you are the boss, and the content goes on the second after that, and it's really stops a lot of cultural activities, because you should first convince the owner of the venue. And that's why it's really sort of problematic to propose new things, because the owners just care about their venues. And it is, from my perspective, it is quite problematic. It's also very much conservative programming.
And let me ask you how maybe the pandemic changed something in Moscow, because I was talking to people in Moscow and they say maybe we even have now more spaces because people do more home offices, people don't shop so much, a lot of people shop online and not in retail stores anymore. And unfortunately, probably also a lot of venues or shops went bankrupt in the inner city. So do you think there's also new opportunities happening with use of space in the inner city?
It will require a change of mindset of the owners of those venues. There will eventually be more empty spaces, but I'm not convinced that they will be used for cultural activity or whatever. I mean, they will stay empty eventually. So yeah, I'm not that positive about this effect. Yeah. We lost Lutz. We lost him.
Yeah, I think Lutz is going to another room and coming back.
Yeah.
But, share a bit like I feel like there's many struggles happening in Berlin around this topic of spaces, and we're in the privileged position of having a big space, and so, but we're also like kind of offering the space out. But like I wonder when there's like whole kind of neighborhoods and there's really like interesting social cultural things happening, that still these projects need to be so worried about kind of being evicted from their spaces, or like rents going up and they cannot stay there. And so there's at least 3-4 super interesting projects where I cannot believe that the city is not like making interventions in this way, or how cultural spaces can be so precarious in general. For us kicking this off here, it's like another set of challenges. We're running our venue in a complementary currency, which allows easy access for also groups that wouldn't have the financial means to rent access to such a big space. And so we're looking at how to build some kind of economical circles between different projects and communities as well. And the idea of puzzling a bit together the different groups in a way that like how can you support another community? How can you build an alliance that is kind of unusual, but because you are using the same space together in a way? Maybe that's the experiment that we're trying to do. And so there's a lot of kind of guiding principles, of course, of like being very open and participatory, but also like breaking really down the language. And we're like, there's a lot of very innovative things existing around us in their own bubbles, and exploring how Web3 technology can influence art and cultural institutions in their governance, or in their own fundraising kind of things. But like, because we're here on the street level and we kind of have this approach to be open for the neighborhood as well, we need to kind of be very easily understood even for young or old people as well. Yeah.
I missed quite a bit, but I just wanted to mention that maybe Jacob elaborate maybe a bit on how the situation is in Berlin compared to a city like Moscow, where you don't really have a community that is lobbying for your needs. I know that in Berlin there are a lot of lobby groups gathering together, fighting against the pressure that we get from real estate. What is your take on it in your situation?
I mean, I started off with that right when we lost you, saying that there is like the struggle is real in Berlin very much in the moment. And there's a new political government, which is mainly the right wing of a social party, or like the conservative wing of a social party, that are cutting a lot of funds for the very progressive projects. And so maybe the reality has not reached everyone, but it's like it's going to come in the next month. So it's like there is some kind of a storm ahead for sure in terms of like movement and support for the kind of cultural social project. And especially then there's like certain groups of people that just in general, like they have a really hard to access spaces for counterculture or culture in general. And even the most progressive projects in the city, like they have this House der Statistik, which is like pioneering on the level of circular economy and reuse of materials, and they are like there, and they were like, okay, what's going to happen next year? Can we have this space to exist and to produce along? And so the reality of many people there is such a survival or kind of scarcity of just the financial pressure in that it makes it really hard for even for projects to collaborate and to have this space of thinking beyond the border of your own plate, so to speak. And how to make adapt into this kind of infrastructural problems, because it's not like there wouldn't be space enough in Berlin. We have like this giant airport that is empty now, and there's like space to create a whole creative city within the city in there. But the reality of making projects is quite tough. And I think in our case, we have some kind of old, maybe punks that actually bought a place to take it out of the gentrification dynamics, but still they need to pay back their credits to their banks, and so
you're still in the market system, sure,
right?
In the capitalistic system. Maybe Mikey, when we as a Central European think about the Nordics, we always think like you're a bit more progressive, and when it comes to communicating and having a bit more understanding for marginalized groups, etc. So, what is the situation for you? Do you think you have a better dialogue and understanding in your city?
Well, I'm also just like reflecting from the experiences that I have, and in this grassroots DIY organizing a context. And for us in Mös Collective, for instance, and well, also in the other groups where I have organized events, for us it has always been important that we do events that doesn't cost anything, or that we don't want a lack of money to be stopping anyone from coming there. So it has been very precarious and very just, it's something that people are doing from their own passion. But yeah, my experience is that there is lack of spaces both in electronic music and also in terms of art, or that it can be kind of these heavy processes of applying for spaces and grants. And my experience is also that electronic music is like, for instance, our collective, it's not very easy to access grants because electronic music is not maybe considered culture in the same way as maybe fine arts. So yeah, there is constantly the struggle of not finding spaces. And at the same time, for instance, Helsinki has several areas where there are these old wooden villas that are just basically rotting. And it's very expensive, of course, for the city to repair these. And I guess it's related to that when they just let them rot for long enough, then at some point it's just like easy to demolish, and maybe some of them are in quite valuable land. So this is, I definitely see that these wooden villas could be more collectively maintained and more offered for cultural use. and also I'm dreaming about all these. The city is full of malls, and there are these old malls also that are not in very active use. So I'm dreaming about using whatever space is there, and abandoned buildings and even apartments for art. Yeah, this is what I would like to see more.
A common narrative is that creative spaces are the victims of their own successes. You're creating something, maybe a more rundown, not very welcomed area. Then other people move in, and this accelerates, and you suddenly have a very attractive neighborhood, and this is then your own extinction, basically, because money comes in, and it's hard to sustain. You, Jacob, mentioned working with a complementary currency. You want to elaborate on that a bit?
I mean, it's also sometimes we're paying the pain or the price for being pioneering something, but it's like it's a digital UBI that's just issued out, and so every person is building their trust connection, and their own currency is actually a mutual credit line with the people they trust. And so the experiment is, how can you get so many people into a system that it's not anymore if like the currency maybe is backed up with like gold or land, but it's like actually the offers that the people put in create another kind of dynamic. And so with this setting, there's another kind of like dynamics of behaviors and of kind of behaviors around money that you can create. And it's way more like, yeah, I mean, you need food and you need rent. And so that's why I'm saying it's complementary, because we're not going to covering all the needs, even though we are kind of looking at the rural sites and finding our partnerships with farmers in Brandenburg and around. But in the end, it's like circles of people that just step into a shared playground of saying, okay, we can be more self-sustainable by and it's kind of like it's this reality of anyways, who wants to go to a shopping center and who wants to like spend their like if you can produce the culture yourself and can make things and teach each other, and yeah.
That's very interesting, but it needs also a very diverse group that has different skills and different offers to make. So there is also a market for everyone. I wonder if you guys have put any thought into creating scalable business models in the so-called metaverse. So is there an idea that we can maybe fight gentrification by building income streams online and not just having a web shop, like really diving into the next level of experiences? I mean, it probably starts with selling art, because that is already something that we're talking of with the NFTs and so forth. But is there something that you could think of from your point of view, from your environment, that you can transfer something into a virtual world with your, let's say, offline brand that you can use online to monetize in a certain way to pay your rent, even if it's skyrocketing, but you can use that prominent brand and also scale it online? Are there some ideas into that direction, or are you curious to know more about this?
Yeah, I mean, the weird fact is that land in the metaverse is so expensive in some cases sometimes it's even the other way around, that you need to run projects and gatherings here to finance your actual land and in some cases. But of course, this
what a shame that we're already at that point. Starbucks and some real estate people buying that property already here. Huh?
But the combination for sure is super interesting. These kind of cyber physical infrastructures and how they go hand in hand. And for us, as some kind of neighborhood-based cultural center, it's for sure it's the way of like, where can you offer your knowledge garden, and you kind of pathways through information as well in digital space. But it's and as you say, like, it's a great way to also showcase the art, but it's also a way to offer residencies to people that made a pledge to not fly, and they don't want to come all across the world to spend their residency here, but they're just gonna contribute the dialogue in this virtual world. We're in the beginning phase of just kind of rendering up, and it's a beautiful way because it's also like allowing so much creativity, and just the act of building another world, going where there's maybe not some possibilities for us. It's like, okay, maybe some part of the metaverse world is black and white, and some part is like just happening in the clouds when you take the air balloon up there, but you still kind of have this rooted thing of there. And I mean, it gets weird when you start to do your permaculture in the virtual world and you do your gardening for your plants in there. But in terms of like a we haven't used the business models yet. We just used it as some kind of like a way to meet and encounter. But for sure, I'd be curious about actual showcases of this dynamics.
Yeah, let's ask Anton, how did you use your how do you call it, gas balloon into the metaverse and had a look?
Frankly speaking, even what Jakob describes is a little bit of a space for me. I mean, it's really an unknown things. Well, first of all, because I'm mostly from the performative arts, which is not very easily transplanted to, to this metaverse sort of reality. But also because the whole dynamic is pretty much unknown in Russia for the Russian practitioners. It's mostly on the basic stage of creating, taking part in a blockchain sort of NFT situation, and that's probably it. So, I mean, it's really something for us to discover I hope in the nearest future, but still unknown. So sorry, guys, it's another reality in Russia, but I would love to share it with you.
Yeah, I think we're all in the very beginning and experimenting. I don't think there is more than speculation at the happening here, but it's interesting to see that it's evolving and a lot of people are excited. Mikey, maybe you want to step in here and also talk about, maybe from your point of view, it's more about music streaming. Is not really something where it's a business model happening, but how do you relate to this idea of metaverse and compensating a bit the losses that we have in real life?
I have to say that I also don't have knowledge on this. We are with Myers, we are in a very basic stage of trying to figure out some level of consistency and sustainability. So unfortunately, I can't say much about this.
No worries. It's just interesting also to hear in what stages you guys are, and if you have thoughts put into this or not. I'm really interested in continuing this kind of dialogue around a virtual space, because I see that mistakes that we have done in the real life with, let's say, a big coffee chain company buys all the inner city properties or renting it, or big companies buying property and making a lot of money with it on the cost of creativity. The question is, how can we unite as a creative community and build up a strong opposition to what's happening here? And I think it's the right time to think about it, but because now everyone is kind of trying out, and we have to be there. So Jakob, really good to see that you're in that phase of experimenting. Maybe going back a bit to the real life real estate business, which is very unfortunate in many cases that I have experienced. We organize protests against developers and so forth. I wonder if there is also maybe a mind change happening because the real estate developers understand that there's also change happening with, I talked about it before, shopping not happening so much anymore. Shopping malls have problems renting out their little stores. Is there a chance for new relationships that is maybe more on the eyesight? Anyone? Do you have more contacts with real estate developers, and are there more open and trustful conversations happening than maybe years before? Anton?
Yeah, maybe eventually. I have an example in St. Petersburg that may be sort of on a more positive side of this development. And it's maybe a general also trend that we are on the stage when the former industrial buildings and former industrial complexes transform in a people's spaces on the stage when the consumption and the creating a next trade mall is over. I mean, people are not interested in in a buying, and that's why the cultural production becomes more relevant to those disaffected industrial spaces. So it's eventually maybe a new model for reusing these old industrial spaces. And I refer to an precise example in St. Petersburg of an old factory, old industrial building, which is close to the water, close to the harbor next to the city. And it's now a very active and quite vibrant cultural venue, which is huge. It's a development project, but it became visible as a cultural thing with the exhibition halls and a lot of activity around, and all the things relating to the gathering place where people meet, where they can drink, where they can practice skating or yoga, and it belonged to a factory, and now it become a development project. But at this stage, it is mostly cultural thing rather than residential or anything. So I don't know if it's a trend, but it's maybe a good sign that the old factories skip the stage of becoming trade malls and become directly cultural venues. Let's see how it may be maybe in the future. But I like this example. It's called Sefkabil Port. I'll send you the link. It's a very nice venue with a very active team, very relevant. Yeah.
Yeah, I can. I wonder if this is maybe also one of the steps that we have to take to create these kind of creative hubs, where you have a really bigger space with more people involved than renting small places and being always depending on the mood of the investor if he wants you to have in there or not. Are there maybe good examples, Jacob, from your side?
I mean, it's a dance, right? I mean, we have this case in Berlin with the old Griesmühle, and they're kind of like they are in a setting where there's the owner is a very known, very commercial developer who's kind of making a pause on his commercial development thing, and so they know that at some moment they will have to leave maybe, but they're kind of just taking this for a moment in between. And on the other side, this is the question: with whom do you go to bed, or from whom do you take the money? It's I tend to prefer, for sure, maybe there's a lot of capital also with other kind of expectations right now. There's a lot of people that do want to like make other kind of influences, and I guess that's also the whole hunch of this days here. Even I'm not so familiar with what's going on in the background of this conference and where this wants to go, or where this wants to pass away into. But I'm just making this example of, I mean, in the urban reality, climate change is not so arrived yet, but like there is this realities where people say, hey, we want to break the asphalt and kind of like allow more life to grow through this world. And there is a lot of people that like to open up new ways. There's even, I mean, there's a and so for me, I'd like to touch this desire for a future like Mikey described, like moss growing over the city. So it's the way for where I feel like a lot of times people like complain about like what's not possible in a way. And in Berlin, there was this giant meme going around, like, oh, it's getting more and more gentrified, and for sure. And I always had the feeling that there was still enough creative energy to always kind of break through at some spots. But in this moment of now, I feel like the zeitgeist is way more into this unusual alliances, and then suddenly the nightlife is teaming up with the climate movements, and together they kind of burst some kind of new spaces. And so in this direction, I feel you can look for capital as well. A capital that wants to have a purpose. That is beyond just capital. And then, well, the other way, just to close this off, there is very interesting real estate developers that also recognize the way. And so I'm going to make also like a non-urban example from a project that I love. It's called the Eternal Forest. And they want to have 1,000 forests that are just forests for 1,000 years and no commercial use of this forest. But if you put on another kind of metrics, you can also say that for your real estate development, this will create lots of different kind of value streams in a business model. So it's way of like also pushing traditional real estate developers into new models of calculating value around it. And in there is, I feel like, a lot of things that we've been not looking at, like how we've been not looking at a lot of things and kind of like taking family out of businesses or like taking nature out of business plans. And like in opening this up, there will also be new, I don't know, like vitality for other models.
Yeah, I definitely would agree that there is a lot of conversation at the moment in Berlin on how we can spark this dialogue with real estate developers, but also create alliances with other movements and stakeholders. Fridays for Future, Black Lives Matter. There are a lot of social cultural movements that also aligned with groups that are coming from the art and culture. One of the conferences that we were hosting in Berlin 2 years ago was only about clubs in new buildings. So we invited real estate developers. It's called Clubs in Neubau. So how can we have this dialogue of, if you build a new building, how can we actually make sure that also spaces that have a lot of frequency with people, but also sound systems, etc. How can we make sure that this is even possible in new buildings? And so this whole dialogue was really, really interesting, and it's being continued with the conference that's happening in March 9th on noise regulations of different, there's like in a federal system as in Germany, you have so many different opinions. People from the countryside think different about noise than people who live in urban areas, and way around. So and since many years we actually have a really interesting dialogue together with the real estate industry in the Chamber of Commerce. So we're meeting on a regular basis. Some people from the real estate industry, and just create a better understanding. And I remember the first meeting we had, and this guy who is like worth billions from a family office sitting on the opposite side, and he's like, creativity. Yeah, my son plays guitar. Like, okay, he's like so far away from what we're doing, how we kind of approaching things. So the only thing he could relate to that his son is playing an instrument. It's so yeah, I think we have to combine those worlds a bit and get them also involved more into what we're doing, invite them to our spaces, and encourage them also to be more interested in what we're doing.
Yeah, and it's even the other way around. I mean, there's lots to learn. Like you said, like, is there business models that the arts can take? And I feel like this is like arts.coop is like a big inspiration of mine, really looking at teaching artists to deal with the economical realities in some way. And so for us in here, it's like, for sure, like, what is the possibilities for micro enterprises and community businesses as well. And on the other side, like, there is so much stuff, and it's kind of like, you don't want to, like, you cannot like factor all the costs in your kind of cultural productions, except you're like a very, because we're here a misfit and we don't have this kind of institutional setting that we could like just live from this big grants in some sense. So it's this in there. It's like, it's why this kind of new also funding strategies are there. And one way that we're kind of opening this up is by using a dreams platform, and saying like, okay, what is the dreams that people want to do, and then like seeing what do they need to do that. And in many cases, it's not directly money that they need, but it's like certain kind of skills and certain kind of ads. And so if the community can provide these add-ons, and they will be happy to support for these dreams, there will be there's not always the need for like this kind of funding as such. And on the other side, I really want to like break down this dynamic around like how to deal with like people with lots of money, because there's always this kind of, like bowing down and or like kind of even adapting, or like even the trends are dominated by directions where there's like a lot of money kind of supporting things to happen. And I do think that like cultural spaces as such, as being spaces for encounters, should be supported way more.
Yeah. No, thanks for that. And I think we can actually make an interesting turn here from, let's say, the idea of approaching real estate developers. And I have a question to Mikey about actually approaching the city when it comes to using public space and public properties. Is there an ongoing dialogue from your collective to say, we are part of the city, we are part of the city society, and we want to contribute with our music, with our art to the public, and create public art and use public spaces, parks or buildings. Do you have any approaches like this that you could mention here?
We haven't been in direct communication with the city, and in some of the some of the collectives I have been, it's been also maybe this kind of position of everyday utopia, that you don't ask for permission. You just, especially in the summer, it's just easy to take over space, and the police doesn't really care here that much. But right now, I'm working on a curatorial project where we want to make use of public spaces, of shopping malls and abandoned buildings and libraries and whatever is available. But yeah, I have to say that so far we still haven't been in direct communication with the city.
And I know that in Helsinki they have a very unique access to along the water side. There is access to water and to energy. So if you need if you want to plug in your sound system or whatever, your barbecue grill, you're able to do this in public space. Are you aware of this, or is this just a myth that I heard of?
I haven't heard of this. Usually we have an aggregator if it's this kind of an outdoor thing. So usually that's how it operates. But yeah, interesting. I have to
bust this myth. Yeah, I have to find. If I found, I will let you know. But I heard about this, and I thought it was a really interesting idea that you, as a city, provide the basic infrastructure you need for a very spontaneous way of gatherings. So you have some water, you have some electricity, and maybe a public toilet, and then anybody can book this with their mobile phone and use this public space for their needs, and have to make sure that you clean up afterwards. And I think collective like yours already have in some cities responsibilities like this. They take care of a certain space, and I was wondering if there's something you'd be interested in.
Yes, absolutely, and also one principle for us has been that if we find a space and we make use of it, then we leave it in a better condition that it has been. And I know that City of Helsinki there has been definitely more efforts to provide these kind of provide grassroots space with basic infrastructure. But yeah, then there's the problem that it's mostly in the summers. So in the winter it gets quite quiet. It's difficult to find space in the winter.
Yeah, there's a very cold winter in Helsinki, I can imagine. Let's use the last couple of minutes a bit looking more into the future and into next actions that can be taken. And Anton, maybe I follow up with you here. So we talked about virtual space. We talked about real estate developers and companies. We talked about public spaces and public real estate. When it comes to Moscow or Russia in general, there are some very rich people who are either you can engage with them to make money or to support their ego. I think that's a very common thing that you can do with rich people. How do you engage with people that maybe help you to find property, develop this for a very long term? So something that is really about the cause and really about not making easy money. Is there something that you can make a suggestion, or do you have some experiences with?
It was actually my comment to what Jakob and Mikey said about, with dealing with the real estate issues, that I can feel that it's mostly state-owned real estate, whereas in Russia it's easier to deal with the private property. I mean, to the particular people or companies. So it's really, really more flexible if you deal with the private initiatives and private-owned real estate or private money. And in this regard, there are some good signs, and there are good and interesting initiatives that that shows that long-lasting cultural project may be possible. I mean, it's not a common trend, and mostly art is financed on a project based for 1 year or at least 3 years, not for a long period. And it normally doesn't deal with the real estate issues. You just receive money and then you do your project wherever you want, wherever you can. But eventually, eventually in the future, it will be more common, and you will be on a more sort of dialogue situation with the private money and private real estate. So yeah, hopefully yes, but not much is done so far.
Do you think this is the right time now, after hopefully after a pandemic now, to start this dialogue?
Well, from Russia didn't had a long lockdown, so eventually you suffered more from COVID and lockdowns, and you had more tough experience. We stopped our lockdown after 2 months, and so we in summer 2020 we could already do something. So I don't think that the lockdown and COVID experience was so difficult in Russia compared to European situation.
Okay.
That's why the changes may be less visible eventually. So yeah.
So Jacob, let's find, or let's try to wrap up the that we can take out of this conversation. For me, some learnings are: we have to have a strong advocacy, we have to unite, and we have to have a common understanding, and we have to address this to officials as well as to the real estate industry. We are here, we can have a dialogue. This is what we can bring to the table, basically. The second thing is, we shouldn't be scared to talk to real estate developers. They have maybe be our alliances and not our enemies. There's probably not only black and white in this industry, so we have to find the ones that are more purpose-driven and have a better understanding of how to develop a city in a purpose way. What else did we learn? We have to look into and experiment with the metaverse, because there is money, there's something like cryptocurrency, there's a way of involving a lot of people all over the world, and decentralize power. What else is a takeout of the session for you?
I mean, when I look at this setting, I feel it's most interesting to find structures for people to pool money together, and to and then there's, especially in terms of buildings, there's these giant costs, and so it's not easy for and then there's all these barriers also for not highly commercial agents to have a say in the real estate market. So there's I mean, structurally, it's very hard even for more this kind of non-formal groups of cases. But then when there is, and so in our case, there is a setting that did this, so there can be a lot of kind of storytelling happening around the different effects that you create. And like you said, having a club in a building, there is a lot of things that do really make sense for this thing. And so the same for co-living, it's very much underexplored how this makes a difference in a setting. And then having local production close by, and like making this kind of creative hubs, you called it, and they do make a real big effort, and so it's interesting to I mean, it does make a lot of sense to build this anew. And I feel like my credo always for the unusual alliances is always hard to realize, because there's so much bridging that needs to happen between certain kind of actors. The city always makes like a very desperate impression, but they, like in most cases, there is like also, I mean, there's also always people that are actively wanting to influence systems in new ways. So it's also a way of like understanding what kind of frames you want to use to actually create a co-producing of the city. And I'm curious, like what is the what is the actual potential? Like, I feel like that is beyond this conference. I mean, now I feel like we are like actually just invited in there, but like there is a direction of like actually maybe taking more places out of the market and giving them available, and what is the dynamics that can make that happen, and how can we as like cultural places now mobilize a lot of capital as well to actually actively take stuff out. I mean, I feel like this is the ongoing homework we have.
Yes, and I agree, and I think also our homework is about looking a bit out of our bubbles into what's happening in other countries and understanding what their needs are and how they're struggling with these topics. I think there was no other time in the world where we were so well connected to each other and can connect people with similar mindsets and with similar interests from different places. I would like to also point out that we did a study. It's called Voices of Creatives, together with a German government organization, GIZ, on how COVID hit the creative industries in Saharan Africa and in Middle East. And it's really interesting to understand how people there adapted to the new situation. And also in some countries that a bit like what Anton said, there were other crises were way much bigger than the COVID crisis. We were gonna deal with this as well. So a lot of also optimism that I could see. Mikey, maybe giving you the last couple of words in the topic of alliances. I know when you're an art collective and your work is basically in a certain, let's say, bubble, in a certain sphere of people, not very presented to a wide public. What alliances would for you be interesting to create in the next years to come? Alliances that would strengthen your art, your work, your community.
Sorry, my camera is not working anymore, but maybe one thing that I was thinking about during this conversation was that I think also as art organizations or galleries or institutions I think we also must acknowledge that we are also complicit in the gentrification. And I think what can be done is that, for instance, if you are a gallery or other cultural space, you can operate as a site for the neighborhood to come together, not just pop in and not have any integration with the local area and with the local community. And understanding the connection to the history of the area and of the community. And this can also be supporting local businesses, raising attention about the issue of gentrification and like raising this discussion as part of the curatorial and educational program, and showing maybe artworks that are resonating with people, and also urging other people to support the local businesses. And yeah, I think to have both the cultural organizations and the local people to operate together against gentrification. And I'm also thinking about, I'm inspired by this position of everyday utopia. So you create your own reality in the here and now, and not waiting for institutions to change. But I also, at the same time, it's quite a precarious position. So I think also we need, like, I've been quite inspired by Rodrigo Nunes' ideas about organizing as a diverse ecology. So taking that diverse ecology as the starting point, and that we don't need to know how to do everything alone. But if we connect with the different resources and capabilities and different individuals or organizations within, let's say, an area, then we can do quite a lot more and find these symbiotic relations.
Yeah, thank you for bringing this from a global thought back to the local action. Very good. And yeah, thanks for everyone for participating in this. I think for the next round, we need a couple more real estate developers in here to hear what they have to say. But I think it was a good start to align a bit, to have a better understanding where everybody's in this topic at the moment. And yeah, thanks very much. Thanks, Anton. Thanks, Mikey. Thanks, Jacob, for joining. And hopefully our ways are being crossed, maybe in real life, not only virtual, soon somewhere. So thanks for the Purpose Forum for having us here. Thank you.